Welcome everybody to another episode of the Rainmaker Podcast, and I'm excited to have this guest on again. And I think you've probably been the most frequented guest on the show for two reasons. One is you practice what you preach, right? It's no fluff, no frills. You're not talking about what people should do. You're just telling people what you did, right? It's a lot of people online talking about things and trying to explain and teach people how to grow something, and they've never done it. And the other thing is I always get to learn something. I always take something away from this call, and I just want to share that with our audience. Right, doing some amazing things. You got a book out, so we'll get you to talk a little bit about what inspired that, what that journey looked like. But more importantly, we always talk about sales, but I wanted to take a different direction this time. I want to talk about like leadership, like how to actually like do something great, because we get online and we see all these amazing numbers, but we don't really talk about like there was a sacrifice that somebody had to make in order to get this. And I want to know how somebody was able to build an agency to over, I think it was 6,000, correct me if I'm wrong, 6,000 agents, right? To be able to manage something like that, because it sounds sexy, but there's probably a lot of complexity in there, probably a lot of sacrifice to build some systems. So I wanted to kind of take a step back and kind of start to when you decided you wanted to do that. And was that something that somebody showed you how to do it, or did you figure it out? And then kind of walk through the ups and downs of what it takes to build a massive empire of 6,000 agents.
Yeah, I dig it, dude. I appreciate it for sure. Loaded question for sure. So it's I'll start with well, the simple thing is you talked about the book, what inspired it. I'll start there. Man, I can remember as far back as probably 2016, 16-ish, where it started. I started like I feel like every a handful of times a year, someone be like, dude, you should write a book, bro.
Mm.
Like it just started becoming like regular. And I had this one agent one time. He was an older dude, had some success in his career, was kind of changing careers, had some money. You know what I mean? He wasn't coming into this thing broke. And was like a preacher at one point in his life, and just an all-around good dude. He loved everything I taught except for how much I cussed. Like that was the only hang up. So we would like discuss it from like a little bit of a higher level. You know what I mean? Like older guy, just his beliefs were a little different. Again, comes from the church, stuff like that. And but he would always be like, dude, you got a book inside you. But he would always try to correct the language a little. You know what I mean? And I remember him, he was one of the first ones that would like do it regularly, say it regularly to me. And it just started becoming a thing, man. And it got me thinking, and over the course of heck, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 of the next years, it just would stay in my mind and someone would bring it up, and it'd stay on my mind and someone would bring it up. And I was always sort of afraid to. One, at some point, I didn't think I was worthy to necessarily. I didn't like, I mean, I don't know. I think we all sort of go through that stage of stuff. I don't feel like I have the best vocabulary in the world. I'm not really the best, like, when I think write a book, I think sit down and take a pen to paper. And the thought of that, I was like, I didn't even do the papers in school. I didn't, you know what I mean? I'm like, so I just had a lot of fears and delays and mental blocks and stuff like that, man. But as I got more and more into building this thing and kind of what's been happening in the last few years, I felt like I developed a message that was resonating with a lot of people. That combined with me wanting to put another challenge in my life, do something hard, knock out a goal. It was sort of all sort of culminated into one thing. And about a year and a half ago, I decided, you know what? I'm gonna let it rip. And I had some time with Coach Burt, and he certainly talks about books a lot.
He activates that creative side where he is like that incited me about a couple things too, which is why I got close to him with the book. Yeah, if you want to write something and get creative, he'll definitely get you fired up for that.
And he connected me with his team, that who he used, and I learned that I could do it in my style. I learned that I could do it by video, and then we could transcribe stuff, and like the process could be easier than I made it. And I realized, like, dude, agents and people building, they overcomplicate things too.
That's
I
a
was just
principle,
being-
right?
Yeah, I was just being a normal human, overcomplicating something that isn't that complicated to someone who knows how to do it. You know what I mean? I decided to take a step back and go like, dude, think of all the people that have written books, bro. There's like 14 zillion of them out there. Certainly, if those people could do it, so could I. And I just decided to turn that switch on, and I made a decision one day and I went for it, and we knocked it out, bro. And you know, there we go. Official.
Do more now,
Yeah.
get better later.
That's it,
And it's so
brother.
funny that you said that too, because I feel like now that you have the book that's like the tagline, like it's official, the tagline is the book, but that's basically the message that you've been saying the whole time.
Yeah, 100%.
It's like you don't need to know anything else. You need to do something with the information you already have before you add more information.
For me, I think it's two. One, it was an active decision to do more now, and I will worry about getting better at it later. Right? Like I chose to stop going like, let me master everything and then I'll do a bunch of it. I was like, let me just reverse it to do a bunch of it, and I'll get better at it another day. But it's also do more now and you will get better at it.
As a byproduct of doing it, you have no choice but to get better, right?
It was a choice, but it also is a principle.
It's a byproduct of it, right?
Correct.
Well, you know what's funny about that? Because academics is like a lot of people we come through the school system. So academics tells you that you need to get a degree and a master's and MBA and like all of this stuff before you can actually go out and start doing something. So we're chained to a desk listening to one person tell us one way of how to do something for so long that if we don't get the information from that source, which is I wouldn't say it's all like smoke and mirrors, but it's a lot of theory filtered into one person's like one news outlet or like this. It's just one source. So that's usually a challenge for people coming in with some type of, we all had to come through the education system. So that's kind of what we're taught. I need to know everything in order to pass the test.
Correct. Yeah.
But the test of life isn't what you know of how to fish from watching YouTube videos. It's from being in the boat, right? Out there casting the line for hours.
You know how I passed the insurance test, bro? I skipped to the end and I took the exam like 15 times. I didn't really along the way, I just did what I had to do to get to the next page in the next chapter. I wasn't crazy. You know what I mean? So I'm like, let's go. Let's just.
That's so funny because the first time I took it, I tried to study it and I failed it. And I did again. And in Tennessee, if you take it 2 times, well, if you fail it, you got to wait 30 days. And then if you take it again, you only get one more chance, so you out for a year. And I tried studying it, right? And that didn't work, and I failed it. So I was like, well, is there a practice test? And so I'm like, well, I'm looking at this wrong. I'm like, well, if I take the practice test and I take that over and over again, I'll start to kind of understand. So I did that. And once I took this little practice test, which is basically like all the questions, and if you take an exam, they don't give you the same questions over and over again. Correct. So I did that. So after doing that so much, I kind of knew what ball they were going to throw at me. And of course, when I went and took it that time, I crushed it. So it's very interesting that you said that. But most people want to know everything.
Same as what you study, as you know. It's not worded the same. It's not structured the same. It's not, you know what I mean? So it's like, why are we studying something that ain't real? And I feel that's what agents do. Like, again, study phone script. Okay. You know, the first time you pick up the phone, the client don't say what's on the piece of paper. Does that make sense? Study the sales presentation.
Well, he didn't say that. He didn't say that.
Correct.
What do I do now?
You know what I mean? So it's like the structure of it is important. The concept is important. But if you're reading it, again, sales presentation, same thing. All right, Arturo. And you present. It doesn't flow. You know what I mean? So you're studying fake. So I don't think studying is wrong. I think studying too much in advance is misleading to what's actually going to happen. You know? So I'm much more of a mess it up. And now this is where people go wrong is they mess it up and then they blame someone and they don't see guidance, or they're afraid to tell someone they messed up, or they're afraid to talk about how it really went. They're embarrassed. They don't want to listen to their own calls, or they don't, you know what I mean? Like they don't want to get in deep. So I'm like, I'd rather you mess it up, bring me the mistakes, and let's tweak them. Bring me
Yes.
the real mistakes, you know? And
See, I'm glad you said that part though. Bring the real mistakes, because I was just thinking for me, I'd want to know enough so I look like I was the
correct.
professional and this and
Well,
that.
in a sales space, dude, if I go like when I was, and this will get into the agency building side. If I go like, Arturo, you call me and you miss some sale or whatever, and I'm like, hey, what'd they say? If I go like, hey, what'd they say? They said, I want to think about it. Well, bro, you should have went back to what the real need was and asked them what, you know what I mean? And your response almost always is like, well, I said that. Right. So then I started tweaking the way I did it. And I'm like, all right, Arturo, tell me what they said. And you give me the objection.
Right.
And then I go, cool. What did you say back? And now I go back and forth with you before I give any feedback, because I want the full story. Because I used to give the answer, and then every agent's answer was, well, I said that. And then I learned in your head, you think you said that.
Yes.
And even if you did say it, you may not have said it the way that you're supposed to say it. The tone could have been off. The timing could have been off. The delivery could have been off. You could have said it like with sarcasm instead of curiosity. You know what I mean? Like the delivery could have been off. So then I started having people record stuff. Because again, you are the person with the problem. So for you to deliver to me what you think the problem is probably not going to come through real clean. You are the one with the problem. So if I go, what do you think went wrong, Arturo? You're going to give me your version. But your mindset might not be in a position to where you can see it the way I see it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when I started having agents record stuff or be with them to hear it live. Dude, when I started agents out, like day one dialing, you'd come into my office. I'd be like, all right, you ready? Yep. All right, dial. But what about what? Wait, no. Pick up the phone. Go. And I would stand there staring at them while they call me calls. And I want the nerves. I want them sweating. I want them stuttering. I want all that. You know, and so some of it became setting expectations. And I'm like, dude, I know you want to book a bunch of appointments, make a bunch of sales, but can your goal just be to go to get 30 or 40 objections for me? So I got something to work with. And so a lot of it was like setting expectations, making things normal, you know, helping people get fears out of their ways. There's a lot of intentionality in the way I would deliver stuff, which I talk about a lot of the stuff in the book too.
Like, where'd that come from? Because you had to have done it the other way first to make a bunch of mistakes and figure out like what the hell is going on.
You ever think, like, any of y'all watching, like, if you've been trying to build and you ever get in your head and be like, man, I just can't find quality people, bro. I just can't find the good ones. Right? Y'all struggle with that. You struggle with that. I've struggled with that. We've all struggled with that. And then I go like, or I hear people go, I'm just trying to hire. You get the ones that are good, that are recruiting. Like they know what they're doing. And they're like, I'm just trying to find other people like me. I'm like, careful what you ask for.
Yes.
You know? And then I always had this thought, dude, if I found people like me, what would they need me for? And why would I deserve to get paid? If they were everything I wanted, why would I deserve to make any money? I mean, like, what value am I adding if they did everything perfect? So I started realizing, dude, I wasn't getting quality people, quote unquote, because the way I was viewing it was incorrect. You know, and if I'm working with people and they expect all the leads to be perfect, they don't expect chargebacks. They expect that they can get on trainings, they cannot get on trainings and still have success, that they can skip the important stuff and still win, that they can run 4 appointments a week and still win, that they can not make enough phone calls and still win. If they expect all these things and then they complain about their results down the road, what I used to do was blame them. Does that make sense? And be like, dude, you didn't get on the trainings and you didn't do this and you didn't buy enough leads and you didn't I would put the blame on them. And then I realized, dude, one, I am the person who hired them. And then if they went into it and they got into the business a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, and they still have the wrong expectations, isn't that my fault?
Well,
You mean
I
in
was going to
some
say that
way?
too. At some point, I've heard you say it multiple times with anything. I got better. I did more.
Yeah.
I looked at this differently because every agent that I work with, over 1,200 of them, the leads, the vendors, the marketplace, the qualifiers, the carriers, like all of this stuff. So that's very interesting.
And
It's
I did
like
have
when
a
you
lot of help
changed,
with
it
it, dude.
changed.
I didn't just like one day, like, bing, it developed over time. I had good mentors for sure. You know, the team is the size that I have a lot of help today. I'll be clear. When I had like 40 agents, it was significantly harder than it is today with 1,000, significantly harder. It doesn't,
Significantly
it's,
harder with 40
oh
than
my
6,000.
gosh, bro. Dude, it's not even remotely close. Significantly hard. It's not even the same game anymore. Dude, I get way more credit than I deserve, bro. It's just there's so many people helping move this train. I'm just one guy. Did I get it started? Yep. But dude, you know how many people are out there working their butt off every day for us to grow to the size we are? How many staff and agents and managers and you know what I mean? Like, I'm just a piece, bro. You know, and certainly I've got the ball rolling. I've taught people how to do things so they can duplicate things I've learned. They've learned from other people. You know what I'm saying? It's like I'm a big fan of learning from multiple people. I think if you're
Right.
learning from just me, you're making a mistake. Truly. And I've taught that well. You know, and I do know how to like. People always go like, "How do you get to so many agents? X amount," and they name a number all along the way. I remember when we had like 500. Like, how do you get to 500? When I had 100, how do you get to 100? When I got 50, how do you get to 50? It's always the same question. How do you get here? I'm like, dude, you're gonna hate my answer, bro.
Mm.
I figured out how to get to like 5 or 10. And then I just taught another guy how to get to 5 or 10.
The basics, huh?
That's it, dude.
So let's talk about that because that's my question. Because I'm always thinking like, okay, what are the things that you need to get right? Right? What are the few things that you need to get right in order to build?
Yeah. I think you need to accept that like if you're in the sales side of it and you look at what those numbers are, how many leads to how many calls to how many appointments to how many sales, if you don't like those numbers, buckle up because they're significantly worse on the building side.
Oh yeah, because people are just gonna be people, right?
It's just significantly worse. You know, it's insane delayed gratification. One of my closest mentors always taught me, bro, building the result you see from building, like whatever you're feeling now is due to what you did 6 months ago. So if you're feeling like you got nothing happening, it's because you weren't doing squat 6 months ago. And if you're not doing a ton now, you're not going to see growth in 6 months from now either. You know, so it's like you don't feel anything, the plus or the minus from it, positives or the negatives from it. You don't really feel them until down the road. And that's very hard for people, especially as instant gratification as we can get in the sales side. You know, so that's the big struggle for a lot of people is understanding. I do an interview now, I hire someone now, even if he's a killer, which is scary if they come in that way, to be clear.
Mm-hmm.
You don't see the benefit or the growth from that right away. And, you know, I think far too many people stop. There's a couple of mistakes I made, dude. I would start hiring some people. Like you understand funnels, obviously, because you are who you are, right? Funnel, you fill them up top and they funnel down into what spits out at the bottom.
Right.
So people start at the top and they do everything it takes to fill the funnel. All right. And then they start working with people and they stop filling the funnel. So then it goes down and maybe one spits out and he quits anyway. Well, you haven't been filling the top. So when he quits, there's nothing behind it. Does it make sense? So it's like you go through these like crazy dips of like, I have 4 or 5 or 10 and I'm working with them all. And I stop filling the funnel. So now when the funnel gets towards the end, you got nothing left and it feels very defeating.
After
I,
all the
I
work you
had to,
put in a time.
yeah. So I had to learn to keep that going. It's like, so say again, you start with running ads and then you go to interview people, right? And then you hire them and then you get them in class and then you get them their license and then you get them contracted and then you get them to get leads and then you get them on the phones and then you get them paid. And then you got to continue to get them paid and teach them how to reinvest. And then you teach them how to build. There's all those layers, right? I have to do all those layers all the time. So doing the first layer is really easy. Run some ads, talk to people, get them, you know what I mean? But then when you start getting here, then now you're interviewing people, but you got to keep running ads. Then you start hiring people, but you also got to keep interviewing people and you got to keep doing ads.
Mm.
Then you're getting people in class, but you can't stop hiring people because the ones in class aren't going to all work out. So you got to keep hiring, you got to keep interviewing, you got to keep running ads. Then you start getting people to get their license. Well, once you get some people get your license, you sure as crap better still be getting people in class. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And once you're getting people in class, you sure got to be hiring more. And every phase, it's like you get deeper and deeper. Now you got to keep doing the layers before also.
So what part of this game is the component of being able to handle more complexity, right? That's what I'm gonna say. Because it's like,
yeah,
like the thing is we want the 6,000, but it's like everything else that you just said, which is that's a lot of moving parts.
That's like 10 more jobs,
right? So being able to handle complexity, because that can get overwhelming.
And then when they're in the field, now what? Dude, they all got life going on. They get chargebacks. I got to deal with them. I got to be their counselor. I got to give them insight. I got to give them hope. I got to train them. Does it make sense? Maybe I got to talk to the spouse. Maybe I got to help someone with their part-time job. Maybe I got to help someone. Yeah, there's always these, right? And the bigger the funnel gets, now you get, again, at some point, dude, I had 40, 50 of those direct to me. And I'm continuing to feed the funnel up top. And I'm hitting all the layers. You know what I'm saying? So I'm like, I'm having, I always look at it like, you ever seen those, it's like, I don't know if it's at like a circus or on stages. You ever see those where they have like a stick and they spin a plate or something on it, or you spin a ball on it? One or the other. They spin those plates.
The halftime show of any game
I like the plates because what happens when it falls? The plate breaks, right? So you got to spin the first one, put some ads up. Well, now you got to get a second one up and we got to do some interviews. So you got to spin that one without letting this one fall over. And now we got to put this one up without letting these two fall over. Does that make sense? So it's like, how much can you handle? It's a lot, dude. And most people just want to spin a plate or two.
Yeah. Which is funny because I'm thinking through that, like, I'm not doing exactly your job of building an agency, but I'm still doing the same work because I find myself, even Jack, I know more about people's personal lives than I should as just being on the marketing side as a vendor, because I'm helping them through that. So now this all makes sense. It's like, oh, yeah, because you're keeping people off the ledge and teaching people how to think. Because if you don't, they're going to keep coming back to you. So you gotta teach them how to work out their own problems.
Correct. Yes. So at one stage, the hardest part for me was I was trying to be super helpful, and I became the answer guy. Need anything? Call me. Hey, man, I can't find my agent number. Where would I get that? Need anything? Call me. Hey, dude, if they take lisinopril, what do I do? 9 months in the business. Hey, dude, need anything? Call me. Hey, man, I had this chargeback. How do you handle this? Hey, man, the carrier isn't answering me. They didn't pay me on time. What do I do? Hey, man, and I became the answer guy, dude. Now what happened? My capacity was limited. You know what I mean? I wasn't teaching people how to be self-sufficient. I wasn't teaching people to be independent. I was teaching them to rely on me for everything. And that got exhausting. So I had to, if someone called me about underwriting, I just answer them. You know what I mean? Where I started getting really good and having growth is you call me about underwriting. I'm like, and again, today's equivalent, maybe it's an app. But I'd be like, cool, you got your underwriting guide with you? No. What? That's like Tom Brady showing up to the game without his playbook.
Yeah, without his wristband. He's like, you don't have that? Like,
correct. Yeah, in today's world, it's the wristband. It's like the little whatever those toolkits, whatever those things are.
Insurance toolkits, yes.
Yeah. They all use that. I get it, but it's like, you don't even know. I go like, I'm not a guy that feels like I have to know every piece of information. I'm okay if I'm not super well versed in every piece of everything that we do. But to not know the information and also not know where to get it, that's dangerous.
Yes.
Like you don't necessarily, should you know underwriting? Yes. But if you don't, and you also don't know how to get the answer right away, I find that weird. You know what I'm saying? I just like, so I had to start teaching people. And so I had to be willing to like let people feel some kind of failure. Anika will tell you, I've worked with her early on. She made that mistake once. She called me. I'm like, hey, you got your underwriting guide? She was like, nope. I hung up on her. She never forgot it again, dude. Some people go, that's mean. Dude, it wasn't her first day. She'd been here for a couple months. Like,
Right.
give me a break.
You know what's funny about that too is like when you kind of just like let people sit for a minute, it's funny how they kind of figure it out.
Yep. There was a stage. It was 20, probably 17, because I can picture where I was, what house I was in, and I was teaching this to someone. I went from literally, I'd pick up the phone for anyone that called anytime. And you start to learn as you do this a lot. It's like, which ones are just using me as the easy answer versus like, I put in some time, energy, and effort to figure it out first before I called you. And a mentor of mine once told me, why don't you wait about 60 minutes before you call people back? And we had a rule. There was like, if you're sitting with a client, you call me twice. I know you were the client. Like we had some things in place. So just for the like, hey, can I pick your brain calls? Hey, I got a question calls.
Those are the worst calls.
I wouldn't answer. And dude, I went from however many calls, I'd call them back. I'm like, yo, Turo, what's up? 90% of them, the answer would be, never mind, I'm good. I figured it out. And it was just such a light bulb moment to me. I was like, whoa. You know, and that just made me so efficient, you know, and that's when I really started changing to let me handle all that stuff in advance, like we do in sales. Like, let me deal with all the objections and the BS up front. So then I just started teaching people when I hired them what each of our roles were. My role became to direct you towards where to get information. My role is not to give you all the information forever. My role is to guide you, give you tips, give you advice, teach you how to make the mistakes maybe less or get through those problems quicker than I did. You know what I mean? But if you're not out there consuming and learning and growing and trying to figure this thing out on your own and studying it and acting like a professional and being obsessed with getting better, I'm not your guy. You know what I mean? So if I go like, hey, the training call is here. It's not my job to remind you next week what time the training call is and where the link is. That's not my job. It's your job to save it and put it on your calendar. And you know what I mean? Like simple stuff like that. What time's the meeting start? That shouldn't be my job after the first week.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like so I had to learn how to just teach people. What's that old teach people how to fish versus give them a fish, that whole saying.
Yeah.
You know
so if somebody's watching this, right? Because it's like there's all these personalities that play, and I am listening to this, but I'm also thinking about the people that have the objection of like, people who like to be liked. So I don't care about that. It took me a while, but now I don't give a rip about what anybody thinks. So the people pleasing people, those are the people that usually have these problems why they can't scale, right? They're
correct.
stuck
100%.
in,
oh, dude, 100%.
Right?
Yeah.
And you can see it.
Yeah.
And they kind of know it, but ripping that band off is so tied to their identity. So I had to start telling people the same thing, which is like, just let it sit. It's like they aren't going to die. They're not on the operating table trying to figure something out. And what generally happens is one, they call you and then they have somebody else that they'll call, or they generally just try to figure it out themselves.
There's some danger in that, bro, where they have someone else to call. So I had to teach people that if I didn't answer, I knew who they would call because they'd call the people pleaser person next. So part of building this thing, if they always called you after they called me, or they called me and they didn't like my answer and then they called you for a different one, dude, I'd have to call and be like, yo, Arturo, Steve, I know he keeps calling you about this stuff, bro. I'm trying to teach him how to like do this the right way. Bro, you're hurting him by continuing to, and I'd have conversations with the next people down the line. Do we have some people I could tell you story upon story upon story. that would just go down the line of the next person that they could call looking for the magic pill. You know what I mean? And that's building this thing is ongoing. You know what I mean? It's like I have to coach a lot of people on this long term. And like teaching sales, dude, after like a month or two, there's nothing new I'm going to give you. I'm bored out of my trees. I can teach you everything in a quick window. If you implement it, you'll be good at it fast. Like if I teach someone how to sell 30, 40 grand a month, I can do that in well under 90 days. Well under, for sure. You know what I mean? 30 if you're like, you implement stuff now. 30 days, dude, I can give you everything I got. But building, that goes on forever, dude. Because there's always intricacies to it. There's always problems. There's always new things that you don't see coming that arise. You know, so part of building this thing was me being willing to get coached and guidance from people to give me feedback that I wasn't always ready for or didn't always like. You know what I mean? Like I had to take it on the chin a lot, dude. And I was willing to. You know, I messed this thing up, which the willingness to mess it up helped me. You know, but I think where people mess it up is they think they get it figured out eventually, you know, and as you add people and add personalities, it adds such a crazy level of complexity. You know, so some part of this was getting a lot of us on the same page, finding other leaders that believed in me and believed in the message. And those became like my guys, girls, like my right-hand people. You know what I mean? I was always trying to be really aware that we pass the same messages. So the whole concept of do more now, get better later, like that became a mantra for the whole team. And it was very normal to go like, dude, if you're seeing 3 or 4 people a week, we can't give you sales. No more sales training is going to help you. You know what I mean? And I just, man, so it became about duplication and finding the right people that wanted to continue to help me grow. And again, if they believe in the message, great. If they don't, I'm not offended. Just, it might not be a good fit. So I was willing to pass on people, bro.
So as a leader, how much of it is kind of sharing and transferring the vision that you have to the team and letting that trickle down?
Oh, dude, a ton of it. So it's like I always say like normalizing and minimizing things is really important. Short-term goals and structure is really important.
Normalizing and minimizing.
So meaning, like when I said earlier about I expect people to get started, go give me like 30 or 40 objections. That's normalizing getting told no a lot. That's on purpose. I'm not the guy that's going to go, you buy 22 leads from Arturo and you're going to kill it. And I love what you're doing. You know what I mean? Like keep doing it. But it's like, I'm never going to deliver that your leads are magic. And
yeah, because that sets the wrong expectation that correct. If it doesn't, and they come back, you told me this.
Correct.
Yes.
I'm just never going to do it. I'm going to go like, I need you to get me 30 or 40 objections so we can work. If you don't get me 30 or 40 objections, I got nothing to work on.
Right.
So then what happens? If they go and get 12, they're not confused that they didn't hit a bar that I can help them. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so
like you want to build this thing. It's like you need to do step 1, take it out of the box.
Correct.
It's like, why does it work? You haven't taken it out of the box yet.
Correct. And when you get 5, 10, 15 objections, you're not like as emotionally stressed when I told you to expect 40. So if you reach out to me and you're like, hey man, I did 100 out, I got 12 no's, I booked 1. I'm like, cool. Good news is it's early. You're like 25% of the way there. Keep killing it.
Yeah. So if you tell them 30 or 40, if they have that in their mind, they can get lucky and get a couple of wins in there, which is less than what you told them to do. Okay. You set the bar of rejection higher than it would normally take for anybody.
I'm just making rejection normal, dude. Does that make sense? I'm minimizing it too. It's no big deal. Dude, 12. I got killed today. Everyone told me no. A lot of people told me to F off today. Cool. What's a lot? I mean, like 7 people already. If I give you $7, is that a lot? Well, no. All right. I mean, that's what you're telling me now. Like 7's just 7. There's not 7.8 million people told you no. You got 7. And I can just bring it down. It's just minimize it, dude. It's not that big a deal. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's like everybody's telling me no today. You're like, oh, really? Well, but you ask them a specific question. Yes. How many people told you no? And then it's like, oh, that was it?
Yes.
Are you
So
trying
it's
to do
just,
this for 1 week, 1 day, or are you trying to build something over the next 5 years, dude? You know how many no's I've gotten?
yeah. And that continues
2017?
at layers. I did a coaching call with a guy earlier, right before this. And he says to me, did you ever feel like you hit a plateau? And I'm like, still not to this day, bro. What do you mean? Define plateau to me. And he goes, I do 20, 30 grand a month a lot. Last month, I only hit 14. And I was like, okay, why is that a plateau? He's like, I mean, it's only 14. And this guy plays football in his past, high school. Like, I think he played in college. Like, he's a football player.
Mm-hmm.
I said, did you ever see a game where Tom Brady threw 3 or 4 interceptions? He's like, yeah. Did he hit a plateau that day in his career? He's like, no. And he looked at me like I was crazy. I'm like, okay. Hey, do you remember when he lost to Peyton Manning in the Super Bowl? Or to Eli Manning in the Super Bowl? Giants twice? He's like, yeah. I said, was that a plateau? I don't think so. I'm like, dude, he won like 4 more after that. 5, I don't know how many. He won a bunch more after that, right?
Crushed it.
He's like, yeah. I'm like, so why do you feel like August was a plateau? Hey, I said, hey, you ever get an agent that you're working with that on a Tuesday afternoon calls you freaking out? They had a bad day. They had a bad Tuesday.
Mm.
He's like, all the time. I'm like, what do you tell them? It's just one day. I'm like, do you really need me to keep training on this, or do you get my point yet? He's like, you're telling me August was just the equivalent of the agent being mad at one day. I'm doing the same thing. I'm like, you're doing the exact same thing, dude. You're just doing it at a higher level. And I'm like, you saw what I sold, I sell 460 grand a year. Do you think it went 40 grand, 40 grand, 40 grand, 40 grand, 40 grand, 40 grand, 40 grand? I'm like, nah, dude, it was 62 one month, 37 the next, 43 the next, 22 the next. Like, it did like this. The problem is your high is only 20 something. Or your low is going to be 8, 10, 12, 15. Then you're going to go 22. Then you're going to go 7. He's like, yeah, that's what I do. I'm like, so are you expecting to not have some version of a roller coaster? Like, ever? You just want a straight ride?
It's like, not the way it works.
Nothing
like,
I didn't really look at it like that. I'm like, I agree. But I had ups and downs too. I just had them up here. And then I started digging down and I found out, I said, let me ask you a question, dude. He goes, but if I make the same amount of phone calls that are equal to the number of apps I had the previous month, isn't that the same? Shouldn't it equal out? I said, dude, you ever seen a running back one day get 100 yards on like 5 carries? He's like, yeah. Would you expect that to ever be normal? Or does sometimes he have to carry the ball 30 or 40 times to get the same 100? He's like, I do. So the phone calls are like carries. You want the yards. You got to do whatever it takes to get the 100 yards, bro. You're worried about carries, i.e. phone calls, always equal in the same number. I'm like, bro, you might have to hit the phones more if you didn't have the same number of appointments or presentations as the previous month. You know what I'm saying? He's like, oh. I'm like, yeah, dude, it's like the equivalent of having a bad game. You play football. You've had bad games. I'm like, yeah. He's like, yeah. And so for me, it's like the analogies and the stories to get people to see things different. Normalize it. It's normal to not have every game be perfect. It's normal to sometimes have to have more carries to get the number of yards. It's normal to have to make more phone calls sometimes to get the number of appointments. You know what I mean? He was just focused on the wrong activity as his marker. You know what I'm saying?
Which kind of removes them off the emotional roller coaster, because that's really what it is everybody comes to you with a problem that they think's a fire, but it's really not.
Correct.
And you just kind of got to
and I got to figure out a way to deliver it to that person. When I related it to football, for him, it made all the sense in the world, because it sounds foolish to think you can get 100 yards on 3 carries, 5 carries, 12 carries every single game. In fact, if you look at every time you get 100, how many carries do you have? What's it going to do? It's going to go like this. Every game is going to be different. It's never going to be, I had 22 carries and 100 yards every game. That's not how it works. And so I had to learn how to relate this to things that people understand and have feelings about, because then I can link the two feelings and go, no, this is just like that.
Yeah, Yeah, now what I like about this conversation too is because everybody's just talking about you need to have 20 conversations, right? And 5 is going to go into this and that. And that's true, but that's just one piece of it. But you're dealing with people, so you have to be able to understand there's these certain buckets of people and these patterns that you start to see. That's what it really is. You got to recognize these behaviors of these people with these personalities, because you're just a manager at this point. You got to be able to manage expectations. Right,
100%.
manage emotions, manage people, where it's just like guiding them in these directions, which I understand completely.
Hey, and then the last layer of this, dude. So I can do it, but if you're building and I can't teach you to do that, I can't scale.
Mm.
Does that make sense? So I got to be able to do it for myself. You've heard the story. The book tells it. Go from nothing to selling force. I did it myself. Then I started being able to teach it. I got some layers of leaders. I'm teaching them how to do the same things I did. Where we really scaled and blew up, and I'm talking like triple in our volume in a year. It's happened multiple times in multiple years because we definitely got stuck. I got stuck at like 150 grand a month. I got stuck at like a big sticking point was like 800 grand a month. I was stuck 12 months there. Those were the two biggest sticking points.
Man, I bet you that drove you insane. Like, what the f is going on right now?
But then we went from 800 to 2.5 million in 12 months, right? Because again, I had to learn it. Then I started teaching the leaders how to do it. Where we blew up was teaching the leaders how to teach it.
Teaching the leaders how to teach it.
Yeah. So learn it, teach it, teach how to teach it.
So
once you get that third layer,
and then teach other people how to do it, and then teach them how to teach other people. So that's the layer.
That's why we blow up the way we do, because I've helped teach others to teach. I don't have to teach in that group anymore every day. It phases away, which is why today it's a lot easier for me because there's so many layers of people that have learned how to teach it also. You know what I mean? And some people are afraid of that because it removes me as the guy. This agency today will grow without me. Just being straight up frank, dude. It will grow without me today. Do I add to it? Can I grow it more? Yes. But there's so many people that are not going to stop because they've been taught how to do things, and not just by me. I'm a piece of it. You know, that this continues to scale. At the beginning, it was all me. As we get bigger and bigger, because I believe in just duplication, you know, you start teaching the stuff. But some people are afraid to give their stuff, and they're afraid to teach it because they need to be the answer guy. They need to be the one in charge. They need to be the man. I don't need that, dude. You know, and I like to continue to grow and stretch and be able to help take people to those new levels. So my goal is to do that process of learn it, teach it, teach to teach, so I can stop doing it. I don't want to do those pieces. If I'm doing now, if in 12 months I'm still doing what I'm doing today, that to me, I suck. So I do that model so then I can go to the next thing, learn it, teach people how to do it, teach people to teach people. So we're doing a lot of marketing and stuff like that. Dude, I will teach people how to do this stuff and building a brand and that will be the next. That's what I'm working on this year. And you see, we're blowing up, dude. I have so many people reaching out for help. It's insane what's happening right now.
Yeah, it is. And I knew it too, because I think we had a conversation 6 months to a year ago. You asked me just threw a question out there. I was like, oh yeah, dude, easy. Just, you know, and then I saw you start focusing on the branding last year, just like all in, which was really good. And so I was like, oh yeah, this is great. Because then it's like you do it, and then you're not teaching people out of theory. You're showing people what you already master, which is super simple. So if you want to have what I have, just do this.
Correct. I can literally tell you all the mistakes, which is why, dude, I have people from other companies reaching out for me to code. I mean, it's bananas, bro. You know, and I don't need them. They want to work here, great. They don't want to work here, great. I can help either way. You know, and it's just becoming the vision that we talked about a couple of years ago is blowing up. You know, just because my goal is this, and it's very simple. Help people get paid.
Yeah. People getting paid, right? That's the thing, is people getting paid. Like you're going to grow. So I guess if we had to just take a step back and look at this from a 30,000 foot view, what are some of the things that you know now that you're that you avoided or you got stuck and you made this mistake over here, and then some of the things that you probably ignored for a little bit that once you started implementing those things helps you to kind of get that faster. Because I feel like most people are trying to do the agency, the only thing that they're focused on is the numbers part, which is just like
Correct.
filling the top and then letting everything else burn. But there's people in there, and then you know, people aren't making money, that they don't have a resource to go to or something like that, then they just wash, even if they are getting a little bit of results. So how do you avoid spinning your wheels? Even if the plates are spinning, it's cool, right? As long as they're spinning. But if you're spinning them and you're chasing your tail at the same time and staying stuck, like, you know, you can kind of burn out from an agency.
I think that for me, dude, there's always problems. If I don't have problems, it means I ain't growing. So it's like I always tell agents, man, if you expect the stuff to go away, you're very mistaken. In fact, when you start selling more, you get more of the stuff you don't like.
Yeah, more chargebacks, more
Correct.
stuff and declines, more emails.
So correct. So if you're building and you expect the stuff to go away, you expect the agents to stop being who they are. You expect to stop having problems. You expect to stop having complaints and people whining and moaning and bitching about leads. And if you expect all that to go away, you're doing the same thing as the agent that expects the no's to go away. You're being the agent that you dislike so much. That's one of the biggest things I learned, dude, is a lot of times us as leaders, we're doing the same behaviors we're frustrated with from the agent. We're just doing them at that next level, you know? So I've learned to value the problems, and I've become someone who solves problems. That's why we do so well. I solve problems, bro. That's what I do for a living. I solve problems, you know?
Yeah, I feel like that's a good mindset to have too, because then like because I went through a bunch of stuff in the past 6 months too. And one of the things when I look back is like I was giving my problems too much power. Right. I was just like thinking about the problems, all this stuff, like you said. It was like, man, you know, it's not going away. If you're scaling and growing, like that's a good thing. So you're like, money changes hands with problems to solve. So if you don't got enough problems, it's like, you know, you aren't growing. So I was like, oh man, this is just growing pains.
Now, if it's the same problems, you're doing something wrong.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like I like mistakes. Repeated mistakes are stupid. Means you didn't learn from it. So problems are good. Same problems means you didn't learn from it. So the problems don't go away. They just change if you're doing it right. Do you know how few people call me today and they're like, oh my God, John, the leads are so bad. I don't get those calls anymore. Why? Because we set the right expectation. You know what I mean? Like people, I do such a good job up front. You ever heard like good salespeople ask really good questions? Right? Do you know why, my opinion, like one of the biggest factors that they have that helps them ask good questions?
What?
It's because they're curious. If you're genuinely curious, you don't need a script of what questions to ask. Right? When people ask me about recruiting and interviewing, they're like, what questions? I had to do it this weekend. I'm like, he's like, what questions do you ask? I'm like, dude, I could send you a list of stuff, but the questions are based on me being curious and understanding people and asking questions so I can help figure out where they're at, where they're going, and what they're wanting. I want to understand their situation.
Right. So you keep asking questions until you connect the dots, and in your head, you can see the full picture.
You can give a path.
Yes, exactly. Okay.
So if I'm curious, ask the right questions.
So my appointment set is always like, if you don't know the answer and you can't, and if you set somebody and I call you right after you book them and ask you to tell me from A to Z about this person, if you can't do that, then you didn't ask enough questions to get the job done.
And they didn't ask enough questions because they weren't curious about, they weren't thinking deeper, very surface level. You know what I mean? So I learned to be really curious, and I am genuinely a curious type person. And I'm not afraid to ask deeper. I stop people a lot and they'll say something like, wait, slow down. Explain that. What do you mean by that?
So funny because I did that. It makes sense. Your birthday's the day after mine too. I've been doing that this whole podcast. Like, wait, hold on.
Correct.
This and that.
Like, this isn't a script that you're genuinely curious about stuff, which leads to where we're talking about, right? So if you understand curiosity creates real good questions in a sales environment, for me, once I'm curious and I ask the questions and I bring someone on, My entire goal, dude, is to help them get paid. So the what to do is very easy when the goal is to help them get paid. When the goal is grow my volume, grow my writers, grow my override, grow my business, the curiosity and the seeking and the understanding goes away. It's from a different angle. If I genuinely want to help you get paid, bro, I understand your whole situation. I understand your kids. I understand your marriage. I understand the finances. I understand what your weekly schedule is. I understand your blocks, your mental blocks, your struggles. Yeah. I understand all that stuff. And
it makes sense because those are all my motivating factors why I would do anything. If you don't know those things, then you can't get through to me in order to get me to do anything, which makes so much sense. I mean, that seems like a no-brainer to me because that's the whole psychology thing. If you don't know what, like, the things that make me tick, why I'm doing this,
correct,
then you can't talk like the football thing. Yeah, you can't. Yeah. Like, if we don't get to that, then like you're not going to get through to me.
And I wouldn't have been able to give that analogy if I didn't know a lot about him. And be clear, this dude don't even work with me, bro. It's just someone in the industry I'm trying to help get paid.
Yeah, that's great, dude.
So,
well, man, I feel like we cover a lot in regards to growing an agency, and the truth is that it takes the quantitative part, but it also takes a qualitative thing. Is that you're solving problems, teaching people how to think, putting structures in place, right? Systemizing things, and then getting people paid. So at the end of the day, I guess that's the most important thing. If I take from this is it doesn't matter what you're doing. If people ain't getting paid, you can have all the systems and all the data and the best team in the world. You got to make sure people are getting paid.
Yep. And that's as we start getting deeper. That's what I continue to teach ongoing. Is diving in, taking the situation, teaching people that thing. And that's why people keep reaching out for help. It's because like we're getting into the nitty gritty and the details and the guts of it. That's a high level concept. Now, how do you do that day to day? All right. That takes time to teach. We can't do that in an hour podcast, bro.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, that's ongoing.
Which leads into, if people want to get connected, there's a couple of things, right? Number one, they can get the book. Where can they get the book from?
So everything can be done at johnwetmore.com for sure. Right. Gotcha. There's a direct link. It's literally domorenow.getbetterlater.com. Take you to a direct link of the book, but you can link to it from the main website.
Right.
For sure.
They can also get access.
And hey, if they get it from me, I personalize and sign every one of them. It is on Amazon, but then they ship it and you don't get a sign. So if you want it, get it from the site and I send them out.
So, I love it. And then they can go into school. School. Yes. So then you can go to the school.
johnwetmore.com/school.
Right. They can link to the book. There's at least 20 modules in there.
Yeah.
And then if they want access to some direct training from you, they can upgrade to the Make More with Wetmore. And then you also have some one-to-one spots. Now, the one-to-one spots is going to be for the serious, not curious people.
Yeah.
Right. Where they can apply to work with you directly. So if they want to learn more about this stuff, they can go there. So you can go to johnwetmore.com and get access to everything. And if they do it directly, they can get a signed copy from you. Right.
Yep.
And then if you want more information where you can see in depth some of these trainings and get a taste of what the John Wetmore experience is, you can go to say it again,
johnwetmore.com/school.
/school. Yes. You can go there. And I know it's good because I helped build it and I just see all the activity in there. People are asking questions. This group by far has the most activity out of any group, more than people who have a group with 9,000 people in it, 100,000. Because I can see it because I went through and did all the research on it. So I know this group is popping for sales. What'd you say?
Because we're helping people get paid, dude.
Yeah, helping people get paid. So with that further ado, man, John, again, it's always great to have you on. This is probably the 5th or 6th time. Never disappointing and always dropping value. I know you got to go. But again, man, thanks so much for hopping on. This is the Rainmaker Podcast.
Later.